Again, a four-man rush. It's batted into the air, and Andrew Van Ginkel gets the pick, chased by McLaurin, and down inside the 30-yard line.
Still kind of incredible that particular play very likely will be the last play of the season for Jaden Daniels. Good morning. It's a Football Friday. He's not playing Sunday. My interest level not nearly as high in the game without him playing. I hope that he is healthy. I would bet that he would be playing if the game meant something, but there's no question that it appears as if he's going to be shut down for the season. We may learn that on Monday. Who knows? Good morning, Max. How are you? A little bit disheveled here to start the show. We had a couple of issues here in the studio, but we're all set now. We're ready to roll. How about Kirko chains last night?
I knew you were
Oh, my
there,
God. I mean, I just love, it's so interesting because when he has games like that, the people that are on, like, literally line up after he has a bad game where they'll see a final score and they'll say, Kirk sucks, or whatever, and they didn't even watch the game. And they line up to just absolutely badger me on social media. Crickets when he plays like last night. Crickets. Now, it is interesting that there are people that are fans of Kirk like I am. They're just, last night's just one of those nights, and it's not like it's totally unique. 32nd time in his career, he's led a fourth quarter game-winning drive, and in this case, down 14 points in the fourth quarter. 3 drives, 3 scores, walk-off field goal, Zane Gonzalez. No doink needed. His last walk-off field goal was as a Washington Commander. I said Commander, sorry, but that's what they were last year in Tampa at Raymond James when he doinked in the last-second field goal to advance Washington into the divisional round. But that was one hell of a football game. Look, I went into that game last night real quickly. Obviously, I gave the Falcons out as a smell test pick, which did not sit well with a few of you. Ben wrote, I can't believe you're giving out the Falcons again. There's no chance this hits. I've doubled down on Tampa Bay. Yeah,
idiots.
Keep shorting me, which, by the way, I honestly, if I were in your shoes, I'd be thinking about shorting me too. There's no way this can continue. I said yesterday, not only do I love the Falcons, and it's an obvious smell test pick, but I think they can win the game outright.
You used the L word, Kevin. You used the L word to me, lock, which you rarely use, I've noticed.
I felt really strongly last night about the Falcons. This is just one of those things when you get into this portion of the NFL season, which just speaks to how close these teams are. It's so money to take the team that has nothing to play for against the team that has everything to play for, especially when they're getting a shorter number. Now, sometimes you'll see, in week 17 or week 18, somebody will be favored by 12 or 13. They've got to win the game, and they're playing a really bad team that's sitting all their starters. Don't touch those games. But if you see like a short number, and last night the number was, it was 4.5 for much of the week. It jumped to 5.5 yesterday, and I think it came down to like 5 right before kickoff. But for a team that has been eliminated against a team that needs the win, and you got to consider this too, the team that you're betting on is capable in some area. They're capable defensively, or they're capable more often than not offensively. That was my concern last night. Kirk has absolutely destroyed the Bucs as an Atlanta Falcon. Go back to, you like that game for his success against Tampa Bay during his career. But he didn't have Drake London. He had 2 practice squad receivers out there. Now, he did have Kyle Pitts, to which, hold on, where's, I think Paulie sent me something. Paulie said something like, be careful, Mark and Largo is coming for you. Because didn't Mark and Largo say Kyle Pitts?
Listen, we've said his name. I'm sure we're going to hear from him here.
Yeah, Paulie sent me, Mark and Largo will never live let
No,
you live down
he
Kyle
won't.
Pitts. Well, I think the story has a little more to go on Kyle Pitts. Look, here's the problem with Kyle Pitts. Last night, he was great. He was outstanding. The Falcons would still be in the playoff mix had he not dropped multiple balls against the Jets a few weeks ago, including on the final drive of the game that would have put him in field goal range to win the game in regulation. There are games, and more games than not, where he goes missing. So it is a buyer beware situation with Kyle Pitts. Everybody in the league has discussed the underachieving Kyle Pitts. But you put Kirko out there with him, and all of a sudden, he gets targeted, especially on a night where Kirk's got 2 practice squad receivers in the game. I will say this, though. Bijan Robinson is so special. He is, I said this before Washington played them back in the early portion of the season. He's my favorite back in the league this year. And he might be just my favorite back, moving forward. I don't think there's a better change of direction, dead leg, vision, feel, on a dime cutter running back in the league like Bijan Robinson. He's the absolute best. And then you add to that he's an absolute dynamic pass-catching running back. Last night, Bijan Robinson, 19 carries, 93 yards, 8 carries, 82 yards, 175 total yards. He does fumble, though. And he had a crucial fumble last night, and that's what gave Tampa Bay a 28-14 lead, because this was actually a really close game. The Falcons were up at halftime, 14-13. In the game last night, real quickly, the Falcons became just the second team in NFL history to have 15 or more penalties than their opponent and win the game. The last time it happened was in 1944. The Falcons had 19 penalties, the most in a football game for a team since 2018. 19 for 125. The Bucs got called for 4 for 25. I've got to tell you, I watched this game start to finish. There were some BS calls against Atlanta. But it doesn't matter. The fact that they overcame 19 penalties, put up nearly 500 yards of offense, and won the game was a miracle. And Kirk was just big time, man. Just big time and big time clutch. The rep he's had has been the absolute wrong narrative and wrong rep for years. He's delivered many more times in clutch moments than he hasn't. There have been times where he hasn't delivered, just like with every quarterback. But he's got the 5th most fourth quarter comebacks of any quarterback in the league currently playing. Last night, he was 30 of 44 for 373 yards, 3 touchdowns, took just 1 sack. And that was on the final drive of the game where he fumbled and he dug it out and recovered it. And then they overcame a 3rd and 28. Amazing to get into field goal range for Zane Gonzalez. What he's done to the Bucs in his last 3 games is just amazing. And the Bucs were healthy last night for the first time in a while. Evans back, Jalen McMillan back, Bucky Irving in the game. But I'll tell you, man, Mayfield doesn't look very sharp. They had a chance to end that game on their last offensive drive, and your guy Igbuka was open. He had beaten his guy, and Mayfield threw it behind him. That would have ended the football game. Tell you, we've had some highly entertaining, right, Thursday night games this year. For all of the talk about how bad Thursday night football is, you go back to that San Francisco Rams game when the 49ers went into SoFi and won. That was an incredible Thursday night game. Remember when the Giants shocked the Eagles on Thursday night? The best Thursday night game of the year was Flacco versus Rodgers, when Flacco lit up the Steelers and Rodgers lit up the Bengals in, 35-34, 35-33, something like that. We've had some games, man, on Thursday night football this year. Some really, really good football games. And last night was certainly unexpected. But the smell test off to a 1-0 start. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 more picks later on in the show for Sunday. I'll tell you right now, I have nothing on Army-Navy tomorrow and nothing on the bowl game. There's an actual bowl game tomorrow between Boise State and Washington. So I've got nothing on the 2 college games, but I've got 4 NFL games, maybe a fifth by the time we get there. I'm still smarting a bit from the idea that Jaden Daniels isn't going to play anymore this year. I really don't like the decision at all. I understand the decision. I think it's a debatable decision. Personally, I do not think it was debatable before last week or any earlier than that. Your starting quarterback plays with 5 games left, period. I don't care what your record is, especially when the quarterback is in his second season and has barely played this year. I do feel like if we get to Monday and we hear from Dan Quinn, yeah, we're going to make a decision on Jaden on Wednesday or whatever, and it's kind of obvious what's coming. It's a little bit different with 3 games left in the season, but if he's healthy, I still think he should play. But I want to emphasize something that I got some pushback on from a lot of you, which is the idea that if he does get shut down, shutting down other key players. This is an area that I don't think we really know for sure as fans whether or not this is a big deal or not. I've talked to people like Jay Gruden about this before. Just the idea that if you shut a healthy player down, like your starting quarterback, with 3 or 4 games left in the season, if it's next week, it would be with 3, but he's not playing Sunday either, so it would be the final 4. Is that an actual locker room issue? I think, and I've talked to Jay about it. He said, yeah, like I would have had a real difficult time going to Trent Williams and saying, we're shutting Kirk down for the final 3 games. Well, why? Well, we're protecting him. Well, why? What about me? I'd like to start thinking about my trip to Turks and Caicos a little bit earlier than usual. But I got some pushback from other people who essentially said, this team is so bad, everybody needs the development. Everybody needs the reps. Really? Without your starting quarterback? Terry needs the reps? Tunsil needs the reps? Tunsil, you could argue, has been the best player pound for pound on the football team this year. He's a dominant left tackle as a pass protector. You want to risk Tunsil not being ready and healthy and ready to go for the 2026 season? Terry as well? I mean, I'd put Cosme into that class. Can you imagine if like Tunsil or Cosme or Terry ends up with a devastating injury when you have already decided you're playing out the string rather than playing to win? Now that, to me, would be silly. I think there's value if you're going to have your starting quarterback out there who has barely played this year to have everybody else around him play football. But if he's not going to be there, what are you doing it for? Marcus Mariota? He's not your starter next year. He might not even be the backup. I mean, he may have options to leave. I hope they get him signed and they bring him back next year. We saw how valuable he is as a backup. But if they are going to shut Jaden down, this should be all about 2026. And when you're talking about all about 2026, you're talking about making sure that with 3 games left, and really it's 4 because they haven't played Sunday's game yet, but everybody else is going to play Sunday. Tunsil's playing, Terry's playing, Marcus is playing. Cosme's playing, Kinlaw's playing, Luvu's playing. Guys that we know are going to be a part of next year's foundation. They're all playing on Sunday. I'd want to see now, not that they haven't had the opportunity to do this, and this is a good argument against now it's time to see the guys that you don't know much about. Well, they've gotten a chance to see everybody this year that they don't know much about. There are 8 players that they didn't anticipate seeing on the field that they've gotten a good read on. And by the way, they may have found somebody in Treylon Burks. That may have been a find. He's an unrestricted free agent. They'd have to sign him in the offseason. That'll be interesting to see if they really do like him enough to give him a contract to bring him back. But that it's a fair point if you say, Sheehan, we don't need to see all of the young players. They've been playing all year. We don't need to see any of the practice squad guys. We've gone through 2 practice squads worth of players. But not really. Not everybody's played as many snaps. We still haven't seen enough snaps this year, in my opinion, of Jordan McGee, of Johnny Newton. It's time to turn those guys loose. All due respect to Bobby Wagner, who is a lock first ballot Hall of Famer and has been a really good player these 2 seasons. Forget about, all of the criticism about him in pass coverage. Without him, I was going to say they'd be worse on defense. That's almost impossible. But they'd be even more lost on defense without him. But it's time to see Jordan McGee play that position. Get him the experience. I wouldn't pull Josh Connerly. He's still developing. He's still growing. Give him those reps. Give Chris Paul more reps. But God help us if at this point, after you've essentially legitimately thrown in the towel and you're playing out the string by bubble wrapping your starting quarterback, if a Sam Cosmi or a Laramie Tunsil or a Terry McLaurin ends up having an injury that takes you into the offseason. Cliff Kingsbury talked a lot about the offseason, the last offseason, in his presser yesterday, which was really remarkably candid about the game that he called on Sunday in Minneapolis. Going to get to some of that when we come back, because I thought Cliff's press conference yesterday, if you haven't heard some of what Cliff Kingsbury said, he's under the gun a little bit, especially after the game in Minnesota. They didn't have a plan. They had a bad plan protection-wise. The play calling, which is always dicey to criticize, but it seemed pretty obvious at the end of that first drive. He took a lot of accountability yesterday. You'll hear it when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com, the show that never forgets you know who can still sling it.
Yeah, it's been a tough season on him. There's no doubt. That's football. It's unfortunate that's happened, but offensively, we've got to keep building and try to get better. Sunday wasn't acceptable on any level, coaching or playing, and so that's our main focus now this week is making some massive improvements before Sunday.
Cliff Kingsbury yesterday. It's coordinator day on Thursday with the media availability. Of course, there's no defensive coordinator right now. It's the head coach. He speaks pretty much 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We'll hear more of him today. But Cliff Kingsbury was very reflective yesterday, not just on the season, but on the Vikings game in particular. And I'm going to play some of that for you because, look, I mean, this is kind of an interesting question. I guess we could do calls on this now that I think about it. But if there was the pie chart of blame and we take injuries out of it, because to me that's the number one, but we're focused in on human beings here. I wonder how the pie chart of blame for this season would break out if Peters, Quinn, and Kingsbury were the 3 options.
I think you got to throw Witten in there at least a little.
You do?
Because I mean, that's what started it all.
That's what started it.
You'd think the defense falling off like that would.
I think people have forgotten. All due respect to Joe Witt Jr. at this point, I think people have dialed in terms of blaming somebody for this rather than what really has been the issue all season long, which is out of their control, injuries.
Yeah.
But if you're going to hone in on a person, it's Peters, Quinn, Kingsbury.
I guess because it is his defense. So
that's the pie chart of blame. And I think actually it would be really close. I think Kingsbury would get his fair share. He might end up number 1.
Ooh, I don't know about that.
I'll tell you what, let's just right now, okay, we'll open up phone lines 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Just dialing in on these 3, Peters, Quinn, Kingsbury. Who do you blame the most for this season? Now, until we get to calls, I want to play some of what Cliff said yesterday. This was on if, the Daniels injury going into the Minnesota game actually impacted the play calling. As we said, it looked like there were no zone reads, there were no designed runs, and he answered that question.
Yeah, we were going to be smart in some areas and try to limit any exposure if we could. But unfortunately, part of the game and that ended up happening.
Yeah, that ended up happening. Throwing it in Van Ginkel's direction, picking it off, and then Jaden getting blocked and landing on his non-throwing elbow, which was the previous injury. In listening to that answer, and I watched it, it's almost like they're like, we just can't get anything right this year. And even when we try, it's going to go wrong. So let's just pull them. It's like everything that's like, think about the injuries even. Now, the Green Bay game was a knee. It was an open field run. They're getting beat. He's trying to get extra yards. But the Dallas game is a quick pressure, a hamstring in the pocket. And then obviously the non-throwing elbow, they could have controlled that by not having him run an RPO, not having him in the game. And then that's flukish what happened on Sunday. Part of me is like, they just got together and said, I mean, whatever can go wrong, Murphy's Law will go wrong this year. So if we leave him on the field, it's going to be the Giants' turf on a frigid day in East Rutherford that ends up ending his season and puts us into jeopardy in the offseason. I get it. Like, eventually you're like, that's it. It's not worth trying to fight through. I just don't love that answer. But I think that's where they've gotten to, where it's just like, it just doesn't matter. Everything we do, even if we think we're doing the right thing, it turns out to be the wrong thing. The next soundbite from Cliff that I wanted to play was him being asked specifically about the goal line situation on the opening drive against the Vikings. I like, by the way, sometimes I think we get to Thursday with the coordinators the offensive coordinator in particular on a team that's got a defensive head coach, he's such a critical part of this. He makes all of the decisions offensively, and he doesn't get post-gamed on Sunday or Monday. So you got to wait till Thursday. But many times the significant majority of the questions for the coordinators on Thursday don't go backwards, they go forwards. And that's where sometimes you'll be like, but remember the play calling sequence? Well, I think it was Tom Shad from the Post who went back. If I got that wrong, I apologize, but it sounded like Tom, with him asking about the 3 pass play calls after they had run so successfully down to the 2-yard line. Here's what he said.
Yeah, I mean, it always does. There's 30 plays in that game. I wish I'd call something differently, and wish one of those plays would have worked, but they didn't, unfortunately. So that's, I think, the nature of a play caller. But there weren't a lot of great play calls in that game, and that's, like I said, that's on me, and I got to get better.
Yeah, he said multiple times, not a great game plan, not great play calls, right there, direct. There weren't a lot of great play calls in that game, and that's, like I said, that's all me, and I got to get better. Look, it's always about the most recent thing. It's just the way we do it now. A lot of people do it now. It was 1 week ago where you would have had to have been blind not to have given him credit for the game plan against Denver, for the play calling against Denver. Even the final 2-point conversion to win the game, that play was open. It was there. It took a great defensive play by really the best defensive player on the field to break that play up. I mean, everything that anybody thought going into that game, got to run the ball, got to go quick game, can't let their pass rush disrupt the game. It was brilliant. And then a week later, as he said, it's the life of a play caller. It's the nature of play calling. It's a hard thing, and it's much different when you're in the heat of it on the field rather than sitting back like we do and watching from afar. But he definitely, during this presser, was reflecting back on what you could sense he felt like was the worst day of the season for him. So he was also asked about how injuries have affected play calling this year. Here's what he said.
Yeah, it's been a unique year in that we've been trying to win games differently than we did last year, trying to do different things, possess the ball, run the football, and play to our strengths. And last year we had some other stuff going on, and we were able to play a little bit more wide open. So I think more than anything, it's just availability of players and just trying to maximize who we are to really just win the game. The recipe we felt was different this year to try and win the game, and so that's how we played.
By the way, all of this talk and it's been a unique year, and this is the way we had to play. Like, this is typically what you get like going into the final week of the season. They still have 4 games left in the season. They have 4 games, but it really does obviously feel like it's over. But how I feel if you've been listening to this show. He's not wrong. Okay. This is the biggest issue this team has had. There's a real difficult I would have a real difficult ability, even as a fan, to evaluate anything that's happened this year because of the players that were missing in action for much of the year. But I did think that part of his answer that probably didn't connect with most of you, and that is when he said, trying to do different things, possess the ball, run the football. It's interesting, right, that he thinks they've run the football. And guess what? Statistically, he's not wrong. But I don't feel like, having watched them play this year, that they've run it anywhere near enough. Nowhere near enough. But they are the 4th leading rush offense in the NFL. And unlike last year, where the quarterback was the leading rusher, This year, that's not true. 2 running backs are their leading rushers. They're also, in terms of where they rank in rushing attempts, they're 13th in the league, top half of the league in rushing attempts this year. And yards per rush at 4.9 this year. They are tied for 5th in yards per carry. Now, they were way up there in rushing offense last year as well, but remember last year, it was because of the quarterback on designed runs, the quarterback on zone reads, the quarterback on a lot of scrambles. This year, your leading rusher through 13 football games is Bill. 125 carries for 550 yards. Chris Rodriguez is your second leading rusher. Also the second leading number of carries, 81 carries, 372 yards. Now, what's also true is they've played in virtually every game. Krosky Merritt's actually played in all 13 games. Rodriguez has played in 11 of the 13, whereas Jaden, if you add it up, has essentially played 6 games. You know, if you take out, basically the 2 halves that he didn't really play in against Dallas and Minnesota, the first drives of those halves, it comes out to like 6 games. You can minus off some of the Seattle game and et cetera, and you end up with basically 6 games that he's played in this year. So if he had played in all 13, it's possible he'd be the leading rusher again. A lot of you, and I mentioned this yesterday just for those that didn't hear it, the scrambling percentage number and the fear that many of you had as you sent me this story from the Ringer about scrambling percentage being way up. Well, it's up 3% from last year. But as I mentioned yesterday, there is some context to that answer. And the context is that by far and away, the game that skews that result higher is the Seattle game, where he scrambled on 30% of his dropbacks. And the reason for that is, as we've discussed many times, is that was the game more than any other in which they literally did not have a receiver group capable of even presenting decent pictures for the quarterback because they were running the wrong routes or they were running the wrong depth on routes. That's why he scrambled so quickly in that game, because he dropped back and it's like, wait a minute, you're supposed to be here. You're not. So that game really did skew that number that people were very alarmed about. But that aside, it doesn't mean that he didn't scramble to ultimately, at the end of the day at a higher percentage. It just was skewed by that one game. But that one game was a dangerous game for him to be playing in. Ultimately, he got injured at the very end of it. So Cliff's not wrong that they've been a running team this year. It just doesn't seem like it. And I think part of it is because it hasn't seemed like it in the biggest spots. Like he talked about the play calling, 2nd and goal, 3rd and goal, 4th and goal. And I think that's where, he hasn't felt the game as much. Now, his answer might be, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to run it on 2nd and 10 when we're down 31-7? When we're down 21-7? When we're down 37-22? I'm giving you legitimate situations from Dallas, Kansas City, Seattle. When we're down 25-3, would you really like me to stick with the run game when we're getting our ass kicked because our defense is so terrible? There's a lot around all of this, but I thought it was interesting that he we've become more of a run team, run the football, where we can't play as wide open as we did last year because of the players that haven't been in and et cetera. I don't think most of us would say that they've run the ball. I think most of us would say they haven't run the ball enough, but the numbers don't bear that out necessarily, although it could have been much more. I'll tell you one thing, Sunday, when I get to my keys, if you care about a win over the Giants, they better run the football on Sunday. There's one more soundbite that I wanted to play. He was asked about Jaden specifically, and about evaluating Jaden, even though he's only played in, 6 total games, played in 7. He was asked to evaluate Jaden's performance, even though he hasn't played a lot. Here's what Cliff Kingsbury said.
Are you able to just assess kind of what you thought of his play overall in that time? I mean, has he done a lot of the things you want? Has he?
Yeah, I would just say offensively, with him, really from the spring on through training camp, just we were never able to get into a rhythm with everybody. Enough practices strung together, enough games strung together, just practicing consistently. It just wasn't able to happen. And so I think it's hard to really assess what that looked like based on just we never had consistent practice or rhythm or anything of that nature, whether he was banged up or, other guys were out.
Yeah, that's just, I mean, you typically don't hear that from coaches. They'll typically say, no excuses, next man up. But that's just the reality. These aren't excuses, they're reasons in the NFL, in sports in general. When you don't have your best players on the field, when you don't have your best players for practice, when you don't have your best players going back to the offseason playing with one another, there's going to be an effect on win total and loss total. From Bobby has emailed me a couple of times, and I've kind of ignored it, but he's hell-bent on saying that Jaden's games in which he did play weren't good football games. He said, how do you assess the Giant game and the Minnesota game where he did have his best players on the field and he played terribly? So I don't get this obsession with going back to the Giant game and saying that Jaden Daniels played terribly. That's not my recollection. I've looked at my notes from the game. There were some high throws. He was a little bit off here and there. There's no doubt. But he had a decent football game. They won the game 21-6. He threw for 233. He was 19 of 30. He didn't throw an interception. He didn't get sacked much. He rushed for 68 yards at 6.2 yards per carry. The Giant game was not a bad game, but let me just warn everybody that week one's always, a non-rhythm kind of a game, especially when you take off the preseason, which is what Washington and many teams choose to do. Week one's always a head fake, but I don't, Bobby's continued to say he thinks that was a terrible Jaden Daniels game. It wasn't statistically or from a metric standpoint even, and was it comparable to the games last year? No. And we said that coming out of the opener. Played decently. They won the game, but it wasn't a Jaden game from 2024. That I agree with. As far as the Minnesota game, yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, there were some good plays, but there were more bad plays. I gave him the lowest grade I think I've given him at any point. Maybe the Philadelphia game on Thursday night last year, or the Dallas game, maybe. But I gave him, a C minus. There's no doubt they didn't have a protection plan for the game. The play calling, Cliff admitted, wasn't good, and at the same time, he missed some things. I do think it's interesting though, because I thought that the second and goal tackle eligible was more on Jaden than on anything else, and basically every single person, Jay Gruden, Steve Suter, they've all said the same thing. It's not as clear a picture, and it's not. It's a throw that if he makes that, it's a dangerous throw, even when it's open, because he's got to throw it to a tackle with his head not, turned around enough, and that the tackle, Brandon Coleman, didn't sell the block well enough, and the corner stuck with it. I thought that was more of an opportunity for him to deliver, but people who actually know say, no, that's not really necessarily the case. But I don't think he played well in the Minnesota game, but I do think he played very well in the Charger game, played 4 quarters in that game. He didn't have his full supporting cast, no doubt. He had Debo, who played very well in that game and was healthy in that game. He had McCaffrey, who made that, incredible catch on that incredible throw at the end of the first half. And they had a run game in that game, if you recall, with Krosky Merritt. That was the game in which, many of you decided he was going to become the next, big-time, all-time great running back. because he rushed for over 100 yards. But Jaden was outstanding in that game after the first 2 quarters. He was very good in the Bills in the Chicago game. The turnover at the end, painful, no doubt, cost him the game, but he was excellent in that game. So I can't get on board with the, yes, he only played in 6 full football games, but still the performance when he had all of his players, it was obvious that he regressed. I can't get on board with that. I don't think that he regressed. I think it's impossible to evaluate. Did he have a game like last year? Not really, unless you want to say it was the Charger game, but how many opportunities did he really have? All right, back to the question. I thought the Cliff stuff was worth playing. I thought he was incredibly direct yesterday. So that leads to this. If there is, a pie chart of blame and we're focused just on, the key people, not the injuries, just the people, who do you blame more for the bad season? Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, or Cliff Kingsbury? 301-230-0980. We'll take calls on that next.
All right, happy Friday, everybody. We kick things off with Thursday Night Football. The Falcons with an epic comeback win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to make the NFC South a little more interesting. This will likely be remembered as the Kyle Pitts game, as he put up 166 yards on 11 receptions and 3 touchdowns. The Falcons, they sneak past the Bucs on a walk-off field goal. Final score 29-28. And last night, the Caps, they took on the Carolina Hurricanes. The boys were up 2-1 in the third until forward Logan Stankoven broke his cold snap, scoring his first goal in over a month to tie the game at 2 goals apiece. Overtime period goes scoreless all the way to a shootout where the Caps are stonewalled by standout goaltender Brandon Bussey. Final score 3-2 Carolina. Tonight, you got the Wizards in action against the Cleveland Cavaliers over on 106.7 The Fan. Pregame gets rolling at 6:45 right after Grant and Danny. Tip-off set for 7 p.m. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch Denton's office and take command throughout all of football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. That is what's trending.
All right, let's do this. I'm going to have some thoughts on the Giants game. There's one big-time thought about the Giants game in terms of the ability to win it. By the way, it's going to be frigid, windy, maybe snow in East Rutherford, although it's possible the snow will have ended before kickoff. Lovely for this time of year for the players and coaches playing a meaningless football game. By the way, the Giants are favored in this game for the first time since, I think it's, hold on for 1 second. I had it a second ago. The Giants are 2.5-point home favorites against Washington. If the line holds, it's going to be the first game the Giants have been a favorite in 21 games. They've been an underdog in 20 straight. They were favored last year over Carolina, as they should have been, I guess, last year. Now, Carolina's on their way to a division title, maybe. All right, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. It's the pie chart of personal blame. Like, who of the three, Peters, Quinn, or Kingsbury, do you blame the most for this season? Again, I'm just going to be, I'm going to beat a dead horse, and it's going to happen all the way until next September. But number one for me is this season was derailed by the injury bug. But if I had to pick one of those three, I personally would pick Dan Quinn. And the reason I would pick Dan Quinn is that I think the most obvious change before the season, in hindsight, not in the moment, even though we all felt like maybe Joe Witt Jr. is part of the problem, inexperienced, etc. But I don't think they were experienced enough at defensive coordinator to get more out of less. The one thing that's been consistent going back to the beginning of the season and even last year has been that the defense isn't very good and really has become an atrocious defense. And not more than one or two times in the 20 games they played last year, including the playoff games, and the 13 this year, 33 games, you can identify maybe 2 or 3 games in which you felt like the defense actually was more, that the sum was more than the parts. I think offensively, that's different. Kingsbury has had moments in which he is elevated, not the best. Look at all of last year. They didn't have a great supporting cast on offense. So Quinn, I think, was too loyal to Joe Witt Jr. And didn't pull the trigger quickly enough this year. What kind of difference would it have made? I don't think much, again, because they didn't have the players. But if you forced me to pick one of the three, I would pick him because I just think the defense had to improve from last year. And even if they had stayed healthy, I don't know that it would have been an improved defense this year. Guess who's on hold and who's been on hold? He got on hold first, and I'm sure this might be about Kyle Pitts, but Mark and Largo, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we should sign him. But when you talked about the pie chart, Kevin, you just contradicted yourself so much. I mean, so much. So look, are you dating Adam Peters, man? Are you dating him? There's no way in the world you can sit up here and say to me and say to everybody out here, I blame Dan Quinn over Adam Peters.
I just did, though. I just did. How did I contradict myself, though?
Okay, here's what I got. We'll talk about Kyle Pitts in a second. I got 70% going to Adam Peters.
Okay, but hold on for a second. You made an accusation. You said, how can you say it? I did say it. I did say Dan Quinn. Yeah. Secondly, you said I contradicted myself. How did I contradict myself? You did
contradict yourself. Because you're sitting up here saying they didn't have the talent. They didn't have the talent last year. They didn't have the talent this year.
No,
so
I didn't say that. I didn't say
that.
I said they didn't have the talent on the field this year because it was gone.
Okay, so
Dorrance Armstrong, Dietrich Wise, etc. What I said was I'm blaming Dan Quinn, and it's Go ahead. I forgot. It's your show. Let me back up.
Go ahead. No,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, Kevin.
No, go ahead.
No, Kevin, go ahead.
No, Mark.
No.
It's seriously. I mean, you're on the payroll. Go ahead.
No, okay.
I didn't contradict myself. Now, you blame Peters, so go ahead. It's fine.
Here's the reason why I say Peters. Okay. Yeah. Start with the draft. Okay, let's start with the draft. Look, I didn't mind him getting Josh Connolly in the first round. But I've said this to your producer several times. Did you really need to get Trey Amos in the second round when you could have got a linebacker or a defensive end? I'm quite sure you could have got one there. You could have got, I mean, you know, when you look at the production at what we're getting out of everybody else, there's no way in the world you don't get a defensive end or a linebacker this offseason. There's no way. And to be fair, I understand if you're gonna blame Dan Quinn about Joe Witt, that's fine. Here's the problem. Dan knew he had the smoking gun in his back pocket because look, Adam isn't improving this roster, so why should I blame him? Why should I blame Joe Witt if Adam has totally botched up the roster on defensive and we're not even going to talk about the wide receiver and tight end situation.
Okay.
I mean,
so Adam Peters is your selection.
70% Adam Peters, 15 apiece goes to Kingsbury and goes to Dan Quinn.
Okay.
And look, here's the other thing too. Right now,
here's the other thing, Kevin.
Week,
yeah.
Okay. Now you marked me. The other thing too, the wide receiver situation. Every day he's pulling people off the streets.
Yeah.
You know, look. I think if it was up to Adam, I don't think he wants Jaden playing for the rest of the season. I think if it was up to him, and
I think it might be up to him. How do you know it isn't up to him? I think he might be the driver of the decision. Let me just say that.
Well, let's just say his credibility right now is not that good, probably on the coaching staff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Kevin, let me ask you something. If you're look, here's the other thing too.
Mm-hmm.
That press conference in August where everybody and their mama said that Cliff Kingsbury was sitting up here talking about Terry McLaurin. It wasn't he was talking about Terry McLaurin. He was talking about the talent on the field. And that's a direct shot at Adam Peters.
Mm-hmm.
I knew right then and there that there was a problem.
All right. I just want to point out that when you went to Adam Peters, and by the way, it's not a bad call. I don't. Okay, are you done? Can I, as the caller, can I have a chance? Can the caller have a chance, host?
Yes, sir.
Because when you went to Adam Peters and you focused in on, I really do like the Josh Connolly pick, but I really had a problem with Trey Amos. Let's be candid about this. The best pick of the draft, at least as of now, maybe Trey Amos. So maybe if Amos probably played at the highest level of any corner on the team this year before he went down for the season.
Okay, that may be okay. And if you want to say that, that's fine.
I just did.
Don't you think we could have got we could have got what do we need? We needed a defensive end and a linebacker.
Right.
We've been needing that for the last 2 years.
You're right. No doubt.
And years, Kevin.
That 100%. And they signed Javon Kinlaw. They signed Dietrich Wise. They were hopeful of being better up front, but we all thought that pass rusher would have been a possibility in this draft. Obviously, when they got to their pick, there wasn't one there that they thought was as good. They were investing also in the protection of Jaden. We understood that. And they got a lot of holes to fill. And they had fewer picks because they traded for Marshawn Lattimore and for Laramie Tunsil. All right, I got to move on. Thanks for the call. Ross in Tampa. Ross, pie chart blame with Quinn, Peters, and Kingsbury as the three options. Go ahead.
Man, I can't even follow up on Mark and Largo. My goodness. I was going to go, if we're talking pie chart, it's 50% for Adam Peters, 30 for Quinn, 20 for Cliff. And that's excluding injuries, because obviously I can't blame it on nobody except for the injury bug. I just felt, in my opinion, like, after last year, I really wish we'd have just stuck the course and just continued to, do what we said we were going to do. But it was the whole win now thing, and we're giving up all these draft picks for guys who may or may not pan out. We struck gold with Tunsil, so I'm cool with that. But, Cliff is the one calling all these running plays like he did down here in Tampa week 1, like he did in Seattle. But just like in the Super Bowl almost 10 years ago, man, you the head coach, Quinn. You got to let your guy know, hey, Cliff, listen, man, we're down big. let's not keep with all these RPOs and anything that will put Jaden in harm's way. Let's just go ahead and we're going to keep him out that late. So if I have to point the finger, and listen, I blame my wife for stuff and I get frustrated. I still love her. I love Peters, man. I'm still a big believer. So I'm leaning Peters. But hey, Kevin, before I jump off here, because I know you got callers on deck, can I ask a favor of you?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This is all I'm really concerned about outside of like the development. I want Commanders to do what my Pacers are doing. We were both a game or two away from winning it all, and we follow up the next year with a bunch of injuries. Just shut everybody down except for those who you want to see develop into the future. Like,
Yeah, I've advocated
down.
for the same thing. With Jaden being shut down, I've advocated for the exact same thing. Yep.
Right. But the favor. Get a hold of your boy Eric Flack and see when the timeline is, and we'll get the unveiling of the stadium. Because that's all I'm pretty much locked in on at this point. I just want to know when that
write that one down,
unveiled.
Max. Let's get Eric Flack on the show with a stadium update soon. That's a good idea. Thanks, especially as we get into these final few weeks of the season. If you're on hold, stay there. Pie chart blame with 3 options: Peters, Quinn, and Kingsbury. My friend just texted me and said, you didn't give us your pie chart. You just gave the most blame to Quinn. Break it down percentage-wise. I will do that when we come back, as will Max. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, the team980.com. We're free and live on the Odyssey app. Pie chart blame with 3 options: Peters, Quinn, and Kingsbury. So here's how I would break it down. And I said, I mean, this is hard for me because number one overall is injuries. That would be 94%, and 6% would be everything else. But that's not an option here. I'm trying to drill down on who you're most pissed at when it comes to a person. Quinn, Peters, Kingsbury would be the top 3 in some order, and I think it's going to be close. I'd have Quinn at like 35%. I'd have Peters at 33%. And I'd have Kingsbury at 32%. That's really close. But Quinn just barely. He's the head coach. And I think the biggest issue for me this year is that they haven't really at any point, maybe other than the Denver game, gotten more out of less, especially on defense where he came back with a coordinator who really struggled in his first year as a coordinator. So that's why I'd give, Quinn a slight larger piece of the blame pie. What about you, Max?
So I broke it down pretty simply. I think 50% goes on Dan Quinn just for sticking by Joe Witt, and really last week's performance. I can't blame that on anybody besides really the players for not being prepared, and that kind of falls under Dan Quinn, and that kind of feels like it's been the story for most of the season. So that's why I think he gets about 50% of it, but 40% of it's going to go to Adam Peters. Just given the thin roster that we have going into this season, like we got really lucky in terms of health last year, but as we know, water always finds its level. So I'm really interested to see kind of how he attacks this offseason and getting deeper and finding a little bit more talent. And then I'm only putting 10% on Cliff just because you going into the season when you expect to have your full complement of offense and then you just don't have that for 90% of the season. That you're going to be hamstrung a little bit. So, those are my numbers. That's why I'm.
Yeah, I want to switch my Kingsbury number.
Ooh,
I think that when you don't have your starting quarterback for basically, it'll end up being 2/3 of the season.
Yeah,
you just can't. I'll tell you, that's me falling into what I just saw. The Minnesota game was
bad.
Really a bad game for Cliff. So I'm going to go 40 Quinn. All right. 35 AP, and that would leave me with 25 on Cliff.
All right.
All right.
So yeah, we're kind of in lockstep, just
all right.
Percentages a little bit.
Let's get back to the calls. Ian, go ahead.
I'm going to go 50% Peters for flawed roster construction, bad draft picks, bad free agency acquisitions, 50% for Quinn for being incompetent at handling Shanahan offenses, which is half the league.
That's another reason. Let me throw that into why Quinn would be the leader for me. Thank you for that. All right, and then 0% for Kingsbury.
Yeah, just for the reason Max said, I think I didn't give Kingsbury a lot of credit last year. I thought it was all Jaden Daniels being a Superman Pro Bowl level, MVP level. So I'm not going to blame Kingsbury, nor do I give him credit last year. But yeah, I would go 50-50. And again, if this is the second part of this call segment, who would you fire potentially? I would obviously fire all of them, but I would definitely start with Quinn. I don't know how you can bring him back if they go 3-14. His defensive philosophy is awful. It's not modernized to today's NFL, and I don't trust him to hire the next defensive coordinator. So if I had to pick one person to fire, I'd fire Quinn. If I could, I would fire all of them.
All right, let me just, because we've done this before, but not everybody's heard it before. Let me just, agree to disagree on the Peters and the roster construction. Okay. I'm not saying that they have a great roster. Trust me, I'm not saying that. But I also understood what he came into. And when you say things like, and other people say things like, he's just gotten it all wrong, I turn to, well, first of all, it's too early on drafts. But if we want to talk about drafts, he drafted Jaden Daniels, which led to the best season in 33 years that this franchise has had.
Kevin, can I ask you?
No, let me finish. Let me finish.
Okay.
Number two is last year in free agency, forget the fact that a lot of it was dipping toes into one-year deals. There were some multi-year deals, but they don't come anywhere near 14 wins in the Super Bowl without adding players like Frankie Louvu, Bobby Wagner, Zach Ertz, Austin Eckler, Tyler Biotish, Dorrance Armstrong, Olamide Zaccheaus, Jeremy Chin, Jeremy McNichols, Noah I. You could even throw in Noah Brown and Cleveland Farrell. There been how about a guy like Nick Bellore and their kickoff coverage? He's as good as anybody is in the league at that. There have been, offset by the kicker situation, terribly handled. Even this year, the Matt Gay signing didn't work out. The Lattimore trade, I didn't knock it at the time, but I'm not charged with making the right decisions. In hindsight, that looks very bad. But that more than gets offset by a phenomenal trade for Laramie Tunsil. That's a home run 10 out of 10 trade. And I do think that the acquisitions in the offseason, had these players been able to play on the field or with other healthy players, that Wise, Kinlaw, Debo, and even a guy like Martin, who's been a bit of a revelation, I just think, and I'm not saying that you're definitely always in on he doesn't do anything right. He hasn't done anything right. But when you ignore the 15 to 17 acquisitions that I just mentioned as like not being a part of what they did last year, I think that's unfair to him.
Okay, so two rebuttals. One, all the guys you named, yes, Louvu was a Pro Bowler, Wagner was a Pro Bowler, and both of them made All-Pro. But again, they were on a horrible defense, so I don't know how impactful they were. Jaden Daniels, again, played at an MVP level, lifted everybody. I think all those guys you named, Zaccheaus, Tyler Biotish, these are just guys.
Biotish is not just a guy. He's a top half of the league center, maybe top 10.
Okay, hey, fine. We can just, our threshold of excellence is different. That's fine.
We're not talking about excellence. You're talking about incompetence. My rebuttal is to Adam Peters is incompetent.
I don't think he's good. And you went through the full audit.
You'd fire him. You wanted to fire him.
I would fire him. But let me ask you this. If you could go back, and I know your answer because you're so all in on this, was it correct to pick Jaden over Drake May?
I don't know. I will admit to you, I don't think we can even come close to answering that question. Now, for me personally, I still feel like that's the right pick, but there's a chance that both of them are going to be great. Like this isn't an either or. Like one of them's going to be all-time great and one of them's going to suck. It's very possible they're both going to be all-time great. And in that scenario, we can debate it 10 years from now. We'll have a lot more data. It's hard to debate it now, isn't it? Because the only guy with real results is Jaden Daniels.
Drake May's about to win the MVP of the league. That's a real result.
Yeah, but Drake May has not yet lifted his team by himself almost to a title game.
Okay, we agree on that point. I'll agree with you that he lifted him by himself.
It wasn't completely by himself. I just went through the list of significant contributors in terms of last year, including, as you pointed out and emphasized, 2 all-pro defensive players on a defense that wasn't that great, admittedly. But Drake May I think he's awesome. In watching him, I think that we're watching one of the 2 guaranteed stars from the 2024 draft. There's no doubt. But I'll tell you what, that team around him is much better than anybody thought it would be before the year started. They lead the league in wide open wide receivers per the DVOA metric. Lead the league. Josh McDaniel doing a phenomenal job. I want to move on, but I think what's interesting about your answer is you acknowledge something you hate acknowledging. And that is not giving Kingsbury even one shred of blame. You're acknowledging that he was handcuffed the entire year without players. I mean,
No, I just didn't value him last year. I think last year was a product of playing a weaker schedule and Jaden at MVP level. You even heard Troy Aikman in one of those things saying, Cliff Kingsbury, when it comes to third down, just tells Jaden, just go for it. Do whatever you want. I don't think Kingsbury, if you interchanged another offensive coordinator last year, would have had a different result. Jaden Daniels was the entire franchise last year.
I know, but do you know how many times we've heard from Andy Reid and anybody who's been the offensive coordinator in Baltimore about I'm not even sure what the play call was because Patrick made it right. So there's a lot of that in the league.
I don't think Andy Reid is great either. Kevin, I don't think Andy Reid is great either.
All right.
To me, am I still on?
Yeah, you're still on.
Andy Reid,
I don't know why.
Andy Reid did nothing in Kansas City before Mahomes got there. Alex Smith had one of the worst playoff collapses ever.
I know.
So,
hey, just relax. Your Phillip Rivers bet is safe. We don't have to have this conversation for another 5 years. I'll see you later. I got to run. Tom, thanks for holding. Blame pie chart. Break it down between Peters, Quinn, and Kingsbury.
Well, how you doing, Kevin? I'm a first-time caller.
Well, thanks, Tom.
And yeah, ever since Kingsbury, it was less for Kingsbury. Now I'm going like 60 on Kingsbury because if you know the offense has not been in a rhythm, why are you still calling the plays like you are? Shouldn't we run the ball more? I think the most consistent thing has been our offensive line, even going back to last year.
I agree. And by the way, I'd throw in the running backs have been pretty consistent.
Yeah, well, that's because the offensive line. I love our running backs. I love Rodriguez. I love McNichols. I just think that like the injury bug is one thing, but we have to measure the management off what they do while our players are injured.
Yeah, no, I hear you. So 60% Kingsbury. What about the other two?
Let's go. Dan, it was like 60 Kingsbury. Let's go 30 for Dan because he's got to tell Kingsbury stop calling these passes.
And that would leave what, 10% for Peters?
Yeah. Peters.
Okay.
He's doing his job, getting the players that we need, but I mean, all these games that we're in, if we're just, even with the defense being so injured, you would think you want to run the ball even more and just hold on to the ball.
Yeah,
the same thing
I'm with you. I'm with you on that. Like I'm telling you, for me, the Minnesota game was alarming, like I've said a number of times, because that was not great from our offensive coordinator, and it wasn't great from the defense, and it wasn't great from a readiness stamp, all of those things. I mean, that was an alarming result. Like I said before, though, if you were having this conversation and saying, why didn't we, or, and ask it as a question to Cliff Kingsbury, why didn't we run the ball more when we had this terrible defense and we had practice squad receivers? And we had backup. We didn't have our starting quarterback. He would point to we're the fourth leading rush offense in the league. We're tied for fifth in yards per carry. We're 13th in overall rushing attempts. And it's not been the quarterbacks that have led the way in that respect. Now, it's been the running backs in terms of the actual numbers. Last year, Jaden Daniels led the team in rushing. Brian Robinson Jr. was second. This year, maybe Jaden would be the leading rusher had he played all the games, and I would bet it would be pretty damn close. But you know what? At this point, if Chris Rodriguez had gotten more carries, I think he'd be by far and away the leading rusher. So there is a bit of a disconnect there, and I get that because I don't feel we've been a running team at all, even though the numbers would kind of bear out a little bit differently. But, thanks for the call, Tom. Let's go to Bob in Rockville. Bob, go ahead.
Again, guys, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
All right, the GM, Peters. I got him listed as 20%. Here's the reason why. He did upgrade what he could. A lot more talent is needed. We all know that all the way around the game, the team. I got Kingsbury definitely at a sure 50%. Why? Not enough running the ball. The power run formation. Line up with a power run and just execute it. Controlling the clock and possession. Last year, we had every game like we were going to get 9, 10, 11 possessions. As you know, we only got 4, 5, and 7 possessions for some games this year because we gave away the ball. So it's also clock and possession management. Okay.
Yeah.
The opposing defense has solved our offensive formation where the I-back is 7 yards off the ball. He's getting hit before the line. That's also a problem. Don't go in that formation as much. Put the quarterback more under center. Last one is 30% for Quinn because he didn't make him do that. He's the head coach. I don't care who is the coordinator, who is the defensive coordinator. It's the head coach final decision to tell them. We all heard about the San Diego coach, Staley or Daly, running the offensive schemes. Well, that guy should have a bigger piece of this chart. He should have a bigger decision in the process of making it. It's obviously that Kingsbury knows how to throw the ball to various people.
Thanks, Bob.
Formations. I think it's great.
Thanks, Bob, for the call. Appreciate it. Let's go to D. Smith in Oxon Hill. D. Smith, go ahead.
All right. So, first-time caller, long-time listener. I appreciate you.
Thank you, D.
All right. Adam Peters, 50%. Here's the reason why. Last year, he gutted the roster, and he brought in a bunch of one-year contracts, older players, which was good. But this year, he didn't upgrade to those one-year contracts like he did last year. He thought he can get over again with them this year, but those were pretty much like Band-Aids. And it's like we use old Band-Aids for year 2. 30% Quinn for sticking with Joe Witt way too long. The defense wasn't good last year. It didn't show any improvement this year. That loyalty thing, like you said, that kind of bit us in the butt. 30% Kingsbury. I'm astonished to hear the rushing stats that you gave. I can't believe we still
I
that high.
I know. I agree. It doesn't feel like it for sure
at all. And it seems like when Five plays, he depends on him way too much. It goes away from the running game, i.e. that Chicago Bears game, last week's game, Green Bay.
Yeah.
And it seems like with Mariota in there, we go to the running game more.
Yeah, well, late in the season here too, Mariota, they feel better about being a part of the run game too. They're clearly not. On Sunday, they didn't make Jaden a part of the run game other than the scrambles. Guys, thanks for the call. I appreciate it, and thanks for the first time call. We got to move on. Sorry for all of you on hold we didn't get to. I'll have keys to a win Sunday over the Giants, and there's one key more than ever, and I'm telling you, Kingsbury is on watch for Sunday. More on that next. All right, they play games Sunday. They have lost, as we know, 8 games in a row. And they'll try to snap that winning streak, that losing streak, against the New York Football Giants Sunday in East Rutherford, where it will be 25 degrees at kickoff with temperatures falling through the game and winds increasing during the game after somewhere between 2 and 4 inches of snow, which they are expecting the snow to end by kickoff. It's more of a Saturday night through late Sunday morning gig. So to me, there are a couple of things that are so obvious about this football game. Number one is this: the Giants are the 31st ranked rush defense in the NFL. Run the blanking football in this game and don't give up on it. I don't care how many people are in the box. No need for tricky numbers. No need for fly sweeps. No need for tackle eligibles. I want my quarterback. If it's going to be Mariota, you might as well have him in the game in which he is most effective, which is as a designed and an option runner. He's a part of a run game, and I want Rodriguez, assuming he's healthy. He's got a groin injury. He was limited yesterday. We'll see what he is today. I want Rodriguez on that kind of a day. I want him to have no less than 20 carries. 20-plus carries for Chris Rodriguez against the 31st ranked run defense in the NFL. And then, by the way, I want Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt to have another 8 to 9 carries for them. Marcus to have 6 to 7 carries. You put that all together, that's 36-plus rushes in the game. That's how they win this game, if you want them to win the football game. Number two, and it's very, very obvious, it's not Brian Flores that you have to worry about. Shane Bowen's gone. But the Giants, if they are anything defensively, they are a good pass rushing team. Brian Burns has 13 sacks on the year. Abdul Carter doesn't have a lot of sacks, but he has a lot of pressures. All right. I don't know if Thibodeau's going to play in the game or not, but they have talent, man, on defense. Don't we know that about the Giants? That we can talk about their record. And by the way, most of their losses have been competitive, close, blown fourth quarter losses, which isn't fun either. But you've got to have a protection plan if you're forced to throw the football game in the football game against the likes of Burns and Carter and Lawrence, etc. Last week's was not good enough, whether it was because of cadence, whether it was because of they weren't getting the right guy blocked up. I'll tell you, the cadence issue disrupted the game more than anything because at the end of the day, Jaden was sacked one time in the game and wasn't like battered in the pocket, but he was hurried to the extent that he shouldn't have been. Much better protection plan if you're going to have to throw the football. Next up, against the New York Giants, you cannot let Jackson Dart hurt you with his off-schedule plays. That's where he's good. He's a young quarterback. He's a confident quarterback. And by the way, he will put his body at risk like no other young quarterback in the game. I mean, this guy is baiting people into hitting him. He's going head first. He's trying to take on tacklers, and he's already been banged up a few times in his rookie year. We've talked about, and many people have talked about, Jaden's got to be protected. He's got to learn how to protect himself. That's the conversation going on in New York right now. But Jackson Dart can absolutely kill you on what Dan Quinn calls the second part of the play. That second part of the play that you can't teach. Off schedule, extend, and then he kills you with his legs. I mean, in 10 games, he's got 337 rushing yards. This dude was on pace, had he been healthy and played 17, for like a 600-yard rushing season in his rookie year. He's got 7 rushing touchdowns in 10 games. He's also completing 64% of his passes, many of which come on that second play. after he's extended the play. You want to keep Jackson Dart in the pocket. Got to do that. If you let him outside of it against our defense, he's going to look like J.J. McCarthy times 5. Number 4, the cliche stuff. You can't end up losing the turnover battle as they did last week, -3, and expect to be even close, even against the Giants. They weren't close against a bad team in Minnesota. Now, it was it was teetering anyway, even before the turnovers began. But this is a game typically between two teams late in the season on a cold day where everybody's counting down the clock together to get the hell out of Dodge, where the team that makes the biggest mistake or the most mistakes ends up losing the game. So if you can play a clean game, you will win on Sunday. Lastly, this is a really interesting kind of situation. You know, the Giants have had kicker issues galore, just like our team has had. They've had them for a couple of years as well. Graham Gano's injuries have been the biggest issue. They have had Graham Gano for 5 games. They had that guy Mac at Ameni. I think he was some Irishman. It certainly sounds like it. And then they've gone with Koo, who, by the way, against the Patriots last Monday night, kicked the ground before he kicked the ball. What that's resulted in, not that one in particular, because that was a field goal attempt. The Giants lead the league in missed PATs. They've got the lowest percentage and the most misses of PATs in the league at 5. I could easily see Sunday coming down to, a kick deciding the game, a PAT even deciding the game in, say, a 17-16 kind of thing. So let's hope that our new kicker, who didn't get an opportunity last week, can remain in that perfect position as he was against Denver. Did Jake Moody kick for the first game against Denver? Right. Yes. Gay's last game was Miami when he missed the 250-yarders. Did he kick against Miami?
Yeah, he did.
Moody?
We basically no, not Moody. No,
yeah, Gay kicked.
Yeah.
He missed the 250-yarders.
Correct.
They cut him loose.
Yeah,
so
you were
Moody's
right.
first game was against Denver.
Yes.
Yeah. He hasn't missed. 2 for 2 on field goals, I think, in that game. And he obviously made a couple extra points because they scored some touchdowns. I'll give you my prediction later on in the show, but God, run the football against that defense. And then let's protect our thrower. Marcus Mariota, in just a few snaps last week, threw a pick, fumbled, and took an 8-yard sack. It wasn't pretty for him. I have an issue with putting all of that on him when you come into a game that's 17-0. Suter said, 17-0, or it doesn't matter. The first pick was a pick at any point in the game, any context. It was just a terrible pick. But protect him. You've got to have a plan for protection, and then you got to figure out a plan for Jackson Dart. Our game doesn't matter Sunday, but there are several that do. We'll go around the NFL and preview some of those games next.
All right. Happy Friday, everybody. We kick things off with Thursday Night Football. The Falcons with an epic comeback win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to make the NFC South just a tad more interesting. This will likely be remembered as the Kyle Pitts game, as he put up 166 yards on 11 receptions and 3 touchdowns. The Falcons, they sneak past the Bucs on a walk-off field goal. Final score 29-28. And Caps last night, they took on the Carolina Hurricanes. Boys in red were up 2-1 in the third period until Logan Stankoven breaks his cold snap with his first goal in over a month to tie the game at 2 goals apiece. All the way to a shootout we go, where the Caps are stonewalled by goaltender Brandon Bussi. Final score 3-2 Carolina. Tonight, we got the Wizards in action against the Cleveland Cavaliers over on 106.7 The Fan. Pregame gets rolling at 6:45 right after Grant and Danny. Tip-off set for 7 p.m. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch programs like Take Command and Denton's Office throughout all of football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us, and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending. All right, Kev, let's kick some things off with a frigid one in Chicago. Wind chills can hit as low as -20 by kickoff. No snow in the forecast, expected to be sunny, but Ben Johnson versus the Browns defense. Bears proved that they could run the ball versus the Eagles a couple weeks ago. Bears favored by 7.5, over under 38.5 to 39, again, depending on where you get it. Not expecting a lot of points in this one, Kev. Am I a sucker? Shedeur did have a 300-yard game last week.
Do you want to hear something wild about that Tennessee Cleveland game last week? Do you know how many possessions each team had in a game that did not go to overtime?
11.
15 each.
Wow, that's a lot.
Cleveland had 15 possessions in the game. So did Tennessee. How does that happen? Why does that happen? Well, you had a lot of punts in the game. Cleveland punted 6 times. Tennessee punted 8 times. A lot of 3-and-out and punt situations. Washington, by contrast, in their game against Minnesota, had 7 total possessions in the game. 7. So I haven't watched Cleveland enough with Shedeur. When you have 15 possessions, you're bound to have some good things happen. And I'd love to see him develop into something interesting for Cleveland fans. That is still a great fan base. I'm just going to tell you, though, man, Chicago's loss to Green Bay last week, I think, was the most impressive outing for them. I mean, the Philly game the week before on Black Friday was great as well. The Browns are so good defensively. I think the Bears win this game. The extra hook is kind of pushing you in the general direction of Chicago. I mean, I could see it going either way. This isn't going to be a smell test pick. I think Chicago gained more fans in terms of skeptics with their loss at Lambeau, and I expect them to win this game. You look at the Bears, they've got the Browns, and then they go Packers, Niners, Lions in their final three. If they're going to hang on to a pretty solid playoff position right now, in the NFC, currently the 7 seed, but tied for the 6 seed with San Francisco. They pretty much have to win this game. They got to get their 10th win against Cleveland. Yeah, brutal cold in Chicago. I like the Bears.
All right, next up, we got an AFC North battle between a hobbled Lamar Jackson and a Joe Burrow who might be contemplating retirement. If the Bengals lose, they are effectively eliminated. Ravens still not out of the fight, but the last 2 weeks have really hurt them in terms of the division. They're favored by 2.5 points. The Ravens are. Over-under is 51.5. You got anything for this one, Kevin?
Yeah, I think if Baltimore is going to look like Baltimore the rest of the way, it would be in this game versus against the Patriots, Packers, or Steelers again. By the way, another brutally cold day in Cincinnati. Temperatures in the teens at kickoff with wind. Lamar's just not been Lamar this year. There's no other way to put it. And when you don't have your best quarterback playing, at his best level, and it's been a lot because he's been banged up, he hasn't been completely healthy. This has been something we've talked about with the Ravens, even during that win streak. They just didn't look right. And Cincinnati's, the disappointment of being in a game in the snow in Buffalo to get back into legitimate playoff division contending, position, and then losing that game the way they lost it, and then hearing Burrow, I got to think at some point they might look at, Burrow and say, what are we even playing him for? Now they have not been, right? They have not been eliminated quite yet. There's still, I think, a scenario in which Cincinnati could do it.
They need to win out and get a lot of help, though.
Yeah, Pittsburgh, I think, would have to lose out. Whatever it is, it would be, an absolute improbable situation to overcome. But look, the Bengals, the Steelers, and the Ravens aren't exactly locks to play great the rest of the year. But I think Baltimore plays well in this game. I think this is the last time this year we see Baltimore give promise to the Ravens believers, because Patriots, Packers, and then in Pittsburgh to finish up the year is not going to be easy. I like Baltimore.
All right. Down to Houston we go. They've got the Cardinals coming to town, and I'm hoping to see C.J. Stroud shred a Cardinals defense that's been pretty average to below average, I guess we'll call it. Texans are favored by 9.5 points, over under 42.5. This one feels pretty obvious in terms of the money line, but could we see the Cardinals in the smell test? 9.5's a lot, Kevin.
Yeah, 9.5's always a weird number. They might be in the smell test. I've given the Cardinals out a bunch.
Yeah.
Here's something about Jacoby Brissett that nobody knows. Since taking over for Kyler Murray as starter in week 6, he leads the league in completions, he leads the league in pass attempts, and he leads the league in passing yards and in passing for first downs. Jacoby Brissett at 32 years old, he actually can play. Now, let me just tell you, some of these yardage numbers and some of these completion numbers and some of these first down numbers have come in situations like he went, listen to this, if you didn't know that he had this game against the 49ers a few weeks ago, he went 47 of 57 for 452 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, didn't get sacked one time. Think about that for a second. He dropped back 57 times in a football game in which they were getting their ass kicked. Like this was, tee off time for the 49ers, and he didn't get sacked once. They almost beat Jacksonville. They almost beat Tampa. They got run out of the building last week. I'm a big Houston believer like you are. We've been talking about Houston for 6 weeks now as a team that, look out, if they get healthy on offense, their defense is that good. I could see, a 28 to 20 game. I could see something like that here, but I expect Houston to win the game And look, for the Cardinals, this will be the best defensive team they faced, period. The Texans right now are lights out defensively. I think CJ Stroud's playing well. Houston wins. Do they cover? Maybe not.
All right. Shout out to anyone betting on this next one, because you, my friend, may need to call the hotline. But what the hell? I'll give you the lines anyway. Jets, Jags. Jags are favored by 13.5, over under 41.5. I said that before I saw the line, Kevin. I kind of hate it, but I think I might take the Jets, at least in a teaser. I don't know.
Well, I think I mentioned this last week when or 2 weeks ago. I forget. The last time I gave the Jets out, I mentioned what their record is against the spread. They finally, that trend was broken last week against Miami. They had covered 5 straight games. They had also won going into last week 3 of 5. If you recall, they beat Cincinnati in that unbelievable comeback. Cleveland, they beat Atlanta in overtime. And their losses were to New England and Baltimore, and the Baltimore game was competitive. It actually speaks a little bit to Miami right now. Miami's playing really good football, that they went into the Meadowlands last week and beat a team that's played much better with Tyrod Taylor. This is a less than 14-point number. Jacksonville will get most of the action here. Jets have been feisty, except against Miami, but they've played hard. They've been competitive. Jacksonville needs to win the game. They're desperate to win the game. I would assume they'll win the game. It's the NFL. You have no idea. In Jacksonville, look, they're prone to turning the ball over. Jacksonville wins. I don't think they cover, though.
Okay. Next up, we got an AFC West matchup between the Chargers and Chiefs. Kansas City still fighting to stay alive. If they lose, they're effectively eliminated. Would be the first time since 2014 that they have missed the playoffs. Chiefs are favored by 5.5, over under 41.5. What do you think, Kev? I like the Chargers based on how the season's gone, but it's Patrick Mahomes. I can't bet against him.
Yeah, this is a perfect spot for the Chiefs.
Yeah.
The Chargers had a Monday night game, short rest going into frigid Arrowhead on Sunday. The game went to overtime on Monday night. The quarterback was battered in 7 sacks with a broken hand already. Give him credit, man. He was a warrior, Justin Herbert was the other night. They needed, Philadelphia to turn the ball over 5 times in the game, including the last one in OT, as they were about to, I think, lose, but Philadelphia self-destructed. I think this is the spot where the Chiefs give the NFL universe just a moment of pause to say, ooh, okay. Because they finished with the Titans, the Broncos at home on Christmas night, and then the Raiders. Could they make a little run here after beating the Chargers to get to 10-7 and make things interesting? I think that happens. I love the Chiefs Sunday to win, and to win big against short rest, battered team from Monday night, going into a desperate team's den on an absolute fiercely cold and windy day. I love the Chiefs' opportunity here Sunday to keep their season alive.
All right, you've talked me into that one. All right, next one. We go from one big game to another. The Bills head to Foxborough. The Patriots, they got a chance to clinch the AFC East for the first time since 2019. Buffalo in the wild card race, so a loss here really wouldn't hurt much. Bills favored by 1 point or 1.5. 49.5 is the total. You think the Pats can do it, Kev, or the Bills get their lick back in New England?
This is the game where, if the Bills are going to win the division, they have to win. They're eliminated from the division with a loss here, and that would give the Patriots the division title, and that would mean that they would host no less than potentially 2 games, and it may be only 2 because they'd be no worse than the 2 seed. They're battling Denver for the 1 seed. Look, Josh Allen was amazing last week, and the Bills' defense came up with a couple of big plays. But I think this is going to be a shootout, and I think the Patriots are going to be able to move the football and score points against that Buffalo defense. The Buffalo defense is a major problem this year, and I've already given you some of the advanced numbers on the New England offense. Josh McDaniel is doing a phenomenal job. He is creating super clear pictures for a quarterback who maybe doesn't even need him because he's playing at such a high level. But in the wide open receiver stat, New England is not only the leader in getting people wide open, it's not even close. If you watch them, even on the deep shots, and there have been some tight window throws. I'm not saying there haven't been, because he can make those throws too, but there has been a lot of pitch and catch, and I think there's going to be a lot more of it against Buffalo. It's cold, it's windy in Foxborough on Sunday, but this could be an absolute shootout. I actually like New England a little bit in this game to get to 12-2 and to close it out. Now, if we get to the postseason and the two of them play, let's say in an AFC championship game or an AFC divisional round game, I might feel differently. But, there's less pressure. Remember last year we were talking about, as Jaden was checking off every box, it's like, he can throw it from the pocket. He can run. He can make plays with his legs. He can do the tight windows. He can throw with anticipation. All the boxes were getting checked. He can come back in the fourth quarter. He can deliver in the clutch. We got to the end of the year, and I said, there's one box left to check. Can he win a game that they have to win, where it is basically win or potentially go home? And we saw what he did in those back-to-back games against Philadelphia and then Atlanta when they clinched the playoff spot. He strapped the team to his back, and they won those two games. And then we saw what happened in the postseason when it truly was win or go home. I am so looking forward to seeing what Drake May can do in these spots. My guess is he's going to deliver big time. I like the Patriots just overall here in these games. They're getting matched up against bad defensive teams. They've had that for several weeks in a row. The Jets, the Bengals, the Giants, and the Bills aren't very good defensively. This feels something like 34-24, 34-27, and New England clinching the division. And by the way, they finish with the Jets and the Dolphins, so they'd have a really good chance to get the 1 seed. And we might see, last year we knew we were going on the road in the playoffs, and we're going to have to win 3 to get to the Super Bowl. The Patriots may be in a position where they only have to win 2, both of them in Foxborough. We've seen that many times over the years, not with this group, but with previous regimes. I like the Patriots in this game, Max. All right. This is the big 1:00 game. Do you like a side in this game?
Man, like you said, you mentioned liking New England at home, but if it's going to be in the postseason, you'd think a little bit differently. I mean, I kind of want to go with the home team, but man, Buffalo's been on a run here, and Josh Allen has just been deciding to put the team on his back every week. So I can't doubt him. It's like the Mahomes thing, but I like the Bills here, but yeah, I'm not going to bet this game. That's how I'll put it. I'm going to stay away.
All right. Do we have another 1:00 game other than our own?
We have one last one. Hate watch. Vegas, Philly. Geno Smith considered unlikely to start for Vegas, so Kenny Pickett will be making his return to Philadelphia while the Eagles are reeling. There's one thing I know about Philly is that city's going to burn to the ground if they lose to this guy. They're favored by 11.5 points, and the over-under is 38.5. What do you got, Kev?
I mean, Philly wins this game.
All right.
I mean,
are you sure?
This feels like easily a 20-3 kind of a game, a 20-6 kind of a game. I mean, we've got brutally cold weather throughout the country this weekend in games, and you got an indoor team coming east for a 1:00 game after they pulled off the miracle of all miracle covers for both the number and the total last week against the Broncos. Philadelphia's coming off heartbreak, and look, if they're not ready, the Raiders are an NFL team, but I can't see Philadelphia losing this game. All right, let's get to Ben Standig. We'll get to the 4:00 games, and then we'll get to my smell test picks and predictions on Washington, New York on Sunday. All of that coming up in our final hour on this Friday football show on the Team 980. Ben joins us every Friday, Monday in this spot. He's got to go quickly because Quinn's going to talk here in about 10 minutes here on this Friday, heading into the game Sunday against the Giants. You wrote on Substack that Dan Quinn should be safe, but history says not so fast, my friend. So elaborate on that, please.
Yeah, so everybody keeps asking, do we think Dan Quinn's in trouble? You asked me the other day, Jesse, you were asking me sort of just generally, what do I think? And people keep saying that, and I'm like, come on, no, I don't believe it. I mean, last year did happen. He gets tons of credit for that, and he gets a lot of blame, obviously, for what's gone wrong this year. But if we're going to blame injuries, then it's kind of out of the coach's hands, all that. But they've lost 8 in a row, and to lose 12 in a row, if they lose out, would be a pretty terrible taste in everybody's mouth at the end of the offseason, not to mention, of the 8, 5 have been up by at least, 20 points or more. So I was like, let me look here. What does history show us when teams have these really long losing streaks? What does it look like? And basically there's been 38 instances of teams losing 10 or more games this century consecutively. And of those 38, there's about 24 that are sort of into one season. Sometimes they overlap, because that's the way it goes. But if it's the same coach, I just sort of kept looking at it. And basically, of those 24 scenarios, the coach ends up getting fired during or after that season, like 63% of the time. And that's not a nothing number. And of those, the ones that didn't get fired, almost all of them did within like the next year. The only 2 exceptions were Zach Taylor and Marvin Lewis, both with Cincinnati, which is sort of running a different organization than everybody else. So again, I don't think that he's in trouble, but maybe you could have said the same thing about some of these other teams until they had some of these long losses. Looking at it, I don't think that any of these other coaches had anything like an NFC Championship game appearance on their resume prior to him. It was mostly guys who had, never coached before and just had really bad careers. Obviously, Dan Quinn's already been a head coach, so he's got that part of the resume too. So again, I don't think he's in trouble, but losing out here, I think it would at least have to bring up some potentially uncomfortable conversations within the building.
But you're not predicting it.
No. I'm not saying that, but again, there always does become a tipping point for anybody of like, what's going on here? This is problematic. So no, again, I as I wrote in the story, I don't think there's anything going to change on that front. Him, Adam Peters, none of that. But yeah, history is history's interesting.
So we haven't talked on the air. We've talked about this off the air since you were last on, which was Monday. Dan Quinn on Wednesday announced that Jaden Daniels wasn't going to be the starting quarterback on Sunday, and then pushed off his answer to beyond Sunday until next week. My gut reaction listening to it is that Jaden's done for the year. What about you?
So I would have said the same thing, and then a few minutes later, Jaden's out on the field practicing, and he's been out there all week. Now it's limited and so on. Like, obviously, I don't think your suggestion is either that if he were to be shut down for the season, that means no practice either. But at the same time, like, if he's actually hurt to the point where we're thinking maybe they don't play him the rest of the way, then why not let him rest? I know it's the left, not the right elbow, so it's not the throwing elbow, but I don't know, still slightly inconsistent with what's happening, but maybe that's sort of par for the course, the way they're trying to just figure things out at this point, and nothing kind of seems to be making sense right about now. I don't know. I mean, look, I've been kind of wrong on this whole Jaden, will he play, won't he play scenario. When he first got hurt and they didn't put him on IR, I was like, well, okay, that doesn't mean he's out. Then he comes back. Now he's hurt again. So you may be very right. I mean, look, there would be 3 games left. I think the basic stance you and I had was, as long as there's a decent enough runway for him to gain some momentum towards the end of the year, play him. And 3 weeks to me was like the short end of that. So anything less than 3, I'd probably be like, the heck with it. And then the fact that they're playing Philly twice, Philly's got their own problems right now, but and not that you'd be afraid of playing a good defense, but just to say if it feels like he's, obviously if he feels at all compromised, don't play him. And if you're just kind of like, you know what, these matchups, let's just call it a day. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not really sure what to make of it, but obviously it's I kind of was curious, what you thought of the whole situation where Dan Quinn tells us he's cleared, that Jaden could have gone back in the game, and then a couple days later we find out he's hurt and he's not going to play this week. It's like, well, wait a minute. It
was a weird few days. I mean, we went from he could have come back into the game to he was just sore, that was Monday, to he's out on Wednesday. And in terms of beyond Sunday against the Giants, we'll reconvene a week from now. I think the whole my personal view is, obviously I think this is true. If they had something to play for this Sunday, he'd be playing. You agree with that, right?
I do. I also think that if the Seattle thing had not happened,
100%,
but like that he plays, which is why I asked Quinn the other day.
You asked him. I played the answer on the show. I don't think he doesn't have to tell you the truth. He's not obligated to tell the truth about any of this stuff, except to the league with injury reports. But I think the Seattle game and just the fact that they've been snake bit with everything. It's like whatever the guy got hurt on a pick where he's chasing down the returner. I mean, that's a flukish play. They're probably like, we can't take this anymore. Whatever can go wrong will go wrong, and we're going to look terrible for it.
And I think that was the stance that a lot of people took when I wrote at the beginning of the week, and you've been talking about it too. Hey, you got to play the guy. If your argument is he might get hurt again, well, then you got to ask bigger questions about what does that say about your thoughts on him staying healthy, kind of going forward. But the fact that they then kind of went with that, I mean, here's how you know that they went with that. And I asked Quinn about this. At the time that he got hurt, and then they kicked the field goal right after the interception, it's 17-0. Now, I don't know the exact moment when he was supposedly cleared to play and Mariota throws the pick, but 17-0 in the third quarter should not be waving the white flag. But on Wednesday, when I said, wait a minute, why is he out at that point? He's like, well, to me, it was more than 17-0. So that to me said that's the moment where they were like, oh my God, I'm throwing my hands up in the air. I can't take this anymore. Kind of.
Yeah.
I'm not really saying these things, but that's kind of what it felt like.
Yeah, no, I think that they finally succumbed to, I mean, we're going to just look absolutely terrible, and it's going to cost people maybe even jobs if he actually, on one of these flukish plays, gets seriously hurt in a game that doesn't mean anything. So, yeah, it's coaching scared to a certain degree, but I think your question about the Seattle game was spot on, and I mean, I heard the answer. By the way, it didn't feel like 17-0 watching it to me either. When he said, when he said over and over again, we just, we were off. We weren't doing anything. I mean, they couldn't get off the field on defense. So even if they had scored on the next drive and it's 17-7, did he really think they were going to get a stop? I mean, they couldn't stop J.J. McCarthy. Turned him into Marino for a day. All right. I know you got to run. So how do you see Sunday's game?
Yeah, I'm standing outside watching for Quinn. So until I tell you, I got to run.
Well, just tell me when you got to go. Well, real quickly, let me ask you about Kingsbury. I just did a call segment where, putting the injuries aside, which I think for anybody that's watched football before, that's the number one reason they're in this spot. But if you're going to blame a person, and the three options are Peters, Quinn, and Kingsbury on a pie blame chart, how would you split it up?
Oh boy, let's see here. Who can I piss off the most here? Well, I mean, to me, I think the injuries exposed the lack of depth, and I think ultimately that's where this thing fell apart. And it's where I would give Kingsbury the slight pass, because once McLaurin and Noah Brown were out, the backup receivers, it was non-functional. That they couldn't do anything that they wanted. And once the defenses realized that in about week 6 and started, crowding the box, it was kind of, checkmate for most of the time. So I kind of have to give him a pass. The head coach is the one overseeing it all. So, it kind of feels like he probably has to get the most of it. But again, with Peters, it's 100% true that he inherited a mess of a roster that's going to take more than 2 off seasons to get things done. But he is still the one that went out and brought in mostly older guys. I mean, they were old last year, and this year, they went much older. And then, unfortunately, other than Jaden Daniels, the draft picks in 2 years haven't done a ton. So I don't know, the Quinn Peters part of it, both, one because of the lack of depth and the lack of upside, and the other one, just for day-to-day execution, I sort of would put them like, I don't know if it's 50-50, but something along those lines.
Sunday, how do they beat the Giants and end this 8-game losing skid?
Yeah, well, one of the other questions that comes up a lot, of course, is why doesn't Chris Rodriguez get the ball more? And because people note the running. And I think the issue is not the running, it's the receiving. He has 1 catch on 2 targets this season. They do not view him as a viable option in a Cliff Kingsbury offense where they're doing the hurry up, all that kind of stuff. You need to have the point is you keep the defense off balance and you have your versatility to take advantage of whatever they have on the field, except that they don't have that when he's out in the backfield. I say all this to note that the Giants are basically the worst team in the league against the run. And if they can actually get a second half lead, I think Chris Rodriguez, this is the game where he maybe gets 15 or more, plus carries. And therefore, that's how they would win. They're running the ball against a terrible Giants defense. Now, of course, the Giants are going to be looking at this as their opportunity to get right. So I don't know. I'll look for the positivity for everybody and go Washington 27-24, but with Rodriguez running. But if they fall behind, I think unfortunately we're going to see the same story we've seen where they're where they don't get it done. But I'll say 27-24. Be optimistic.
At Ben Standig on X on Twitter, he writes a great Substack column covering this team, and he's got a podcast called Last Man Standing. Thanks. I'll talk to you later.
Awesome, man. See ya.
Ben Standing, everybody. When we come back, we will go around the rest of the league, the 4:00 games. Did you hear Todd Bowles at the end of last night's game? And Max put up a poll on our blame chart pie blame chart question. I'll give you the results there. Smell test picks, predictions on Washington, New York still to come as well. Don't forget, if you have been thinking about replacing your older windows with newer windows, my recommendation is to do it with Window Nation. If you have been waiting to do it, you've actually waited for the right time because they're offering 50% off on all windows and window styles and 0% interest for 5 years if you choose to finance the purchase. Replace your old or your builder grade windows with custom built high quality windows from Window Nation. They get it right from the jump. They measure each window 3 times to ensure proper fit. 96% of their installs require no follow-up service. Their installation crews finish the job in a day or less, so you can enjoy minimal disruption. Get the windows you want to protect and beautify your home. Choose from over 1,500 styles and colors. Their installation crew leaders average over a decade of experience. You can trust Window Nation to install your windows correctly for the first time. By the way, they offer a lifetime warranty on all of their windows, so you can relax knowing your home is protected far into the future. Hurry, this sale ends. It's the end of year sale. It ends at the end of the year. Don't wait to put an end to your window problems. Schedule a fast, free, no obligation estimate right now at 866-90-NATION or go to windownation.com.
63 yards. Cousins open. He's got Pitts. Cuts to the inside. Gets taken down inside the 20-yard line.
Last night's game was phenomenal. I mean, it didn't mean much to us. It didn't mean much to the Falcons, but that's how you play, and you play competitively even when your season is over. Certainly they haven't spoiled completely the Tampa Bay season, but Kirk was fantastic in the game. Bijan Robinson, unbelievable. They've got talent. They had 2 practice squad receivers out there, no Drake London, and it was an unbelievable record-setting performance when it comes to penalties. The most since 2018 in a game, 19 penalties for the Falcons. And for only the second time in NFL history, a team committed 15 more penalties than the opponent and still won. 19 penalties for Atlanta. It was, I don't know how Raheem Morris survives down there. But the other coach, Todd Bowles, I'm such a big fan of Todd Bowles. But the Buccaneers have now lost 5 of their last 6 games, including 2 straight at home to the Saints and the Falcons. Todd Bowles, usually pretty measured, not very emotional. Listen to this expletive-laden rant.
What do you tell them in the locker room after a game like that?
It's inexcusable. You don't make excuses. You gotta care enough where the shit hurts. You gotta fucking care enough where the shit hurts. It gotta fucking mean something to you. It's more than a job. It's your fucking livelihood. How well do you know your job? How well can you do your job? Well, you can't sugarcoat that. It was inexcusable, and there's no answer for it. There's no excuse for it. That's what you tell them in the locker room. Look in the fucking mirror.
I love Todd Bowles. He's always been one of my absolute favorite. By the way, a Redskin and a championship winning Super Bowl ring-wearing Redskin. That was outstanding because usually he is very much a not point fingers. But he basically said, you got to care enough so that this S hurts. It hurts. Look, they are still very much in this thing. They play Carolina twice in the final 3 weeks. They control their own destiny, even if the Panthers win on Sunday against the Saints. And by the way, that's a tricky game for them. And the Panthers, by the way, still also have on their schedule a game against Seattle. The Bucs have to play the Dolphins, who are playing much better. But, man, it was a bad loss. They had this game won up 14 in the fourth quarter. But the other quarterback of the other team, Mr. Clutch, you-know-who, Kirko Chains, led them back 3 scores on their final 3 drives to win 29-28. I love Todd Bowles. I'm rooting for Tampa to win this division, although it'd be kind of fun to see Carolina in it as well. All right, let's get to the rest of our Around the NFL preview and head towards the late afternoon window.
All right, we got the Titans heading out west up against a Niners team that you mentioned yesterday was getting no love whatsoever. They still won't if they win this game, but they will be 10-4 and have a 96% chance to make the playoffs. Niners are favored by 12.5, 44.5 is the total. Anything on this one, Kevin?
You know, we've talked a lot about some of the young quarterbacks, and in the case of the Browns, Shadur Sanders here recently. Cam Ward was the number 1 overall pick. How's Cam Ward played? Well, in the last 5 games since week 11, he has the 12th highest completion percentage rate. That was something he was struggling with. He's growing. He's getting better. They faced an absolute, beast of a defense last week in Cleveland's defense, and he was effective as much as you can be against that defense, and they ended up winning the game 31-29. They don't win Sunday, even against this 49er team. Looks, the 49ers are this aberration this year, having all the injuries they've had on defense, but continuing to win. I've pointed out, though, they own, of their 9 wins, all right, the Saints, the Cardinals, the Falcons, the Giants, the Cardinals, the Browns, the Panthers at home. Panthers are good. They have beaten the Rams. That was earlier in the season on a Thursday night. And then week 1, they beat the Seahawks. But 7 of their 9 wins, not so impressive. But the rest of their schedule, Titans Sunday, at Colts, not totally different look now. Bears at home, that'll be a big one. That's a Sunday night game in the next to last week of the season. And then they finish with the Seahawks at home. They're so well coached. They've got, right now, I guess, certainly one of the top 2 or 3 offensive players in the league in Christian McCaffrey. The 49ers win this game.
All right, we got the Panthers heading down to the great state of Louisiana to take on the Saints. Carolina clawing back in the division race, but it's all going to come down to those 2 games against Tampa. A win would definitely help here. The Saints playing spoiler, and honestly, I kind of hope they win so we get a better draft pick, but that's loser talk. I love being 3-10. It's awesome. Panthers.
Look, this is a big game for the Saints. I mean, they really, these 2 games, you don't want to be forced to have to win both of them. And if they lose, they're 7-7. And Tampa, based on, I think, the divisional tiebreaker, or maybe not after last night, this is not going to be an easy game for the Carolina Panthers. The Saints knocked off Tampa Bay last week in Tampa. The Saints have been playing excellent defensive football. They are a really good defensive team right now. And guess who's a part of that? Chase Young has turned into a real pass rushing, disruptive threat for this team. They've played the last 2 games without Alvin Kamara. He got hurt when they lost to the Falcons a few weeks ago at home. We'll see whether or not he goes on Sunday. Tyler Shuck has gotten better. He's making the most out of his opportunities. He had a big touchdown run. These are the games that the Panthers, haven't necessarily played well in. They have struggled a little bit at times against teams that you didn't expect them to struggle against. I think the Saints get this done. I think the NFC South is a complete disaster right now, and you're going to have 2 7-7 teams. The Saints, right now, Denton, their DVOA number in the last 5 weeks defensively is 7th in the league. They are a good defensive team right now. I think this is one of those trap games. I think Carolina's in trouble. What's next?
Kind of with you there. We got some games this week, Kevin. Next up, I'm going to stamp this one. The Kevin Sheehan Show defensive game of the week. Packers make the trip to Mile High. Some might even call this a Super Bowl matchup, but not me. Both teams entering this one off divisional wins. Denver clinches a spot in the playoffs with a win, but the Packers favored by 2.5 points. Over under 42.5. I think this is the game Bo Picks makes an appearance. Kevin, what say you?
Have we gotten to the point where we'd consider Christian Watson to be inching up towards top 10 receivers?
He's getting there, but
he's getting there, isn't he?
Like
he's a legit home run, deep threat. And
he's what we thought
big.
Matthew Golden was going to be.
Right. Maybe that's next year. It takes a while on draft picks.
It does.
He was huge against Chicago. He was huge the week before on Thanksgiving Day against Detroit. He came back whenever it was. He didn't play against us in week 2. I want to say he came back at some point in mid-October. He's 6'4". People look at Watson, and he can run. He creates incredible separation. I'm impressed every time I watch him. And we've talked about Green Bay, their receiver situation at various times. One of the reasons Jordan Love has played much better here recently and more consistently recently is because Christian Watson is on the field. They've also got the best running back on the field in Josh Jacobs. I think the Packers go to Denver and win. I'm with you on Bo Nix. I mean, he's going to face an unbelievable defensive team. Denver, if you look at their last couple games against the Raiders and Washington, this has been easy pickings defensively. The Packers are, stop it. This is going to be 24-14, something like that. I like the Packers to win in Denver to maintain their NFC North lead.
Yeah, I think they're going to be dominant in this one. All right, next up, we got another fun one. Lions heading out west against Sean McVay's Rams. Detroit fighting to stay alive in the playoff hunt. A loss dropped their playoff chances down to 45%, but with a win, they jump up to 75%. Meanwhile, the Rams can clinch a spot with a win, but they're still neck and neck with Seattle in the division. Rams -6, over under 54.5. It's another multi-screen Sunday, huh, Kevin?
Yeah, It is. I mean, Green Bay, Denver, and Rams, Detroit in the same window, in the 4:00 window.
Oof.
I mean, some games. This should be a shootout, man. Detroit's having an issue stopping people. The Rams can score pretty much every time they have the football. That's why the Carolina results just interesting, but that's because they turn the ball over. If they don't turn the ball over, I like the Rams, and I like the Rams big. This is huge for Detroit. They got the one they really needed last week against Dallas. If they lose this game, they're far from done at 8-6 with the Steelers, Vikings, and Bears to finish up the year. But this should be a great football game. I don't even think we talk about the Jared Goff, Detroit connection. It seems like they've played an awful lot. Is that my imagination? They played 1 year in the playoffs, maybe 2 years in the playoffs at this point with Jared Goff. I like the Rams. I think they're the best team in the league. It's not like they've got a home field advantage at SoFi. I think they can run the football. I think they can score a lot. Detroit's going to have to match them. Give me the Rams and a cover. I think this feels like, 38-28, something like that, but a really good football game. Look out for Byron Young, who's come alive. And Penei Sewell has struggled with some injuries. That matchup's going to be interesting. I mean, right now, Nakua and Devontae Adams, it's probably the best combination of wide receivers among the teams that are going to be in the postseason. I don't think you can debate that, can you?
No, you can't.
Yeah.
2 number ones on the same team.
2 number ones on the same team. Man, God, Devontae Adams is still so good. And he catches every single fade.
It's almost an ageless wonder at this point. It's shocking. All right.
Is there another 4:00 window
There
game?
is, Kevin, and it's one of my favorites. Indianapolis going to Seattle. It's Phil Rivers time, baby.
I'm like, I'm just such a big Phillip Rivers fan. Those of you who have listened to me for years know that he's one of my all-time favorite quarterbacks. He's not where Kirk is on that pecking order, but I just love the way Phillip Rivers played. I think he's a Hall of Famer. It's interesting about how many Hall of Fame Phillip Rivers conversations there have been in the last 2 days, even stories written about it.
Yeah.
Because if he does get elevated from the practice squad, he will have to wait another 5 years before he's eligible. He's a semifinalist right now. And I've been pleased to hear a lot of the football people say, no, he's going to be a Hall of Famer. And people in the game believe he was one of the best to ever do it. You can't tie, Super Bowls or playoff records necessarily to a quarterback when it comes to excluding them from Hall of Fame conversation. I have no idea how this is going to go. It really does speak to the lack of depth of really good quarterback play in the NFL that coaches can trust. Coaches need, number one, for you to be able to understand the game plan. Number two, to be able to communicate the game plan. Number three, to be able to actually recite the plays in a timely manner in the huddle. So you get to the line of scrimmage. That whole operation is so important, and young players struggle with that. And then they got to have the guy. And when you have to have a game that's going to be able to see, oh, this is what they're in, this is what the protection needs to be, and this is where I'm likely going to look first before I progress through the rest of it. The most important thing for Phillip Rivers is, can they protect him if he has to throw the football? Because he wasn't when he did play. In recent years, I'm talking about in his last few years, he can't create with his legs. What he can still do at 44 years old, everybody says, is throw it. What he still can do is all the, above the neck stuff. Can they run the football with Jonathan Taylor? Can they get some quick game? Can they protect him? It certainly seems like a bad place to start at Seattle against that defense, against Leonard Williams and company. But I wouldn't put it past him to play well at some point. They still have a little margin for error. They're 8-5. They probably have to get to, 11-6. So they've got to win 3 of their final 4. But their final 4 are at Seattle, San Francisco at home, Jacksonville at home. That'll be a massive game. And at Houston, which could be a massive game. I don't expect them to beat Seattle. They're 13-point underdogs, but I can't wait to watch Phillip Rivers on Sunday. If he plays, I think he's going to. Why would you sign him this week if you didn't want him to play on Sunday? All right. Smell test coming up. We'll also have predictions on Sunday's Washington, New York game. We'll get to that and more. After this, you're listening to the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980. You can also always stream us at team980.com, and you can watch the show, stream it on our YouTube channel, the Team 980's YouTube channel. He's having a difficult time speaking right now, people. He might need some help. But I would like you to hit the subscribe button and the like button if you're watching us on the Team 980 YouTube channel.
All right. Happy Friday, everybody. We will kick things off with a recap of Thursday Night Football. The Falcons completed an epic comeback win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to make the NFC South just a little more interesting. This will likely be remembered as the Kyle Pitts game, as he put up 166 yards on 11 receptions with 3 touchdowns. Falcons sneak past the Bucs on a walk-off field goal, 29-28. The Caps, they took on the Carolina Hurricanes last night. Boys in red were up 2-1 in the third period until forward Logan Stankoven broke his cold snap, scoring his first goal in over a month to tie the game at 2 goals apiece. Game goes all the way to a shootout where the Caps are stonewalled by goaltender Brandon Bussi. Final score, 3-2 Carolina. Tonight, we got the Wizards in action against the Cleveland Cavaliers over on 106.7 The Fan. Pregame gets rolling at 6:45. Tip-off set for 7 p.m. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch programs like Take Command and Denton's Office throughout all of football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
This may be my favorite tweet of the year for me about the smell test. It's from Stephen A. Not that Stephen A. Can I get an easy win? I hate sweating out all of these close calls. Yeah, okay. Yeah, let me try to make it easy for you. Let me try to give you a relaxing situation at halftime where the game's basically over. I think this is after the Denver Raiders scenario last week, all time, big time bad beat. If you were on the wrong side, I was on the right side of both of them, with really one of the all-time finishes to get a gambling win on both the game and the total in that game with what had to happen at the end of the game. Honestly, I have no idea how many of my games this year, how many of my 96 winning picks versus my 57 losing picks have been close calls versus easy wins. I think there have been a lot of underdog outright winners, though. That's what it usually is. I mean, somebody did a whole breakdown and sent it to me, but I think it was a little bit off. But I would bet you that 80% of my smell test selections are underdogs. And I would bet of those underdogs, half of them win outright, at least. So when you have an underdog that wins outright, that's usually kind of easy. Like last night's selection, Atlanta plus 5.5 was a smell test Thursday night special. They won outright. Never sweated it, although they were down 14 in the fourth quarter. All right, let's go to Sunday. Nothing tomorrow, nothing Army Navy-wise. I actually looked a little bit at Army plus the number, but there's a lot of conflicting information in terms of where the sharp money is. There's probably more public money on Navy. There's also a bowl game tomorrow between Washington and Boise State. So nothing tomorrow. Let's go to Sunday, where in the early window, I like two favorites. This is, not typical for me, but let's start with the Kansas City Chiefs. They are at home. They're laying 5.5. There are some 6s out there. There are 5.5s out there. I'll lay the 5.5 with the Chiefs at home against the Chargers. I mentioned this earlier. Not only do they have to win the game, but they're catching a team short week after a Monday night, long, drawn-out, brutal affair with the Eagles in an overtime win. The Chiefs, I think, at home on a very cold day at Arrowhead, it feels like this line, given the way they've played and the fact that the Chargers are 9-4, seems very high, and it is, and the public is playing the underdog. They're playing the Chargers in this game at a pretty hefty rate, not only bet total, but dollar total. Give me the Chiefs at home laying the 5.5. I think finally the public's caught up with Baltimore's not very good, and so they're betting Cincinnati as an underdog. The Ravens on the road laying points, laying the 2.5 on what will be a brutally cold day in Cincinnati as well. Look, I've been calling this on the Ravens all year, even during their winning streak, that they just don't look right. They were beating bad teams when they were winning those games. But I think they give, Ravens backers one last chance to believe that they can get it done. And I think they go into Cincinnati and win. The public loves the underdog here. Give me Baltimore. Now, there's some 3s out there. There's some 2.5s. I'm going to take, as long as there are plenty of 2.5s out there, I'm going to take the 2.5 and lay that with the Ravens on Sunday in Cincinnati. I've already mentioned that this really reeks of all of the games out there. Carolina laying 3 at home against the Saints. The Saints did win last week. I mentioned to you that right now they're playing like a top 10 defensive football team. This has trap written all over it. Carolina thrilled, coming off the bye, coming off their last win over the Rams, coming off being able to watch their division foe, Tampa Bay, lose last night, give up a big lead. It's not going to surprise me at all if New Orleans not only covers, but wins the game outright. Take the Saints plus the 3 points against Carolina. And then lastly, we didn't even talk about this game, Max. We forgot. I think I moved too quickly into the break. We didn't preview Vikings-Cowboys. But the public loves Dallas. They love Dallas because they're on a, mini bye. They didn't play last Sunday. They played last Thursday night. Minnesota won impressively 31-0, but the Cowboys are a public team in general, and they have to win. If you really are looking at the NFC, if Dallas's chances specifically, their chances really are to win the division. They are currently 6-1. The Eagles at 8-5. So they don't play each other again. There can't be a tiebreaker because the Eagles don't have a tie unless they were to tie a game down the stretch. The Eagles have the Raiders. They have Washington twice and the Bills. They have to lose 2 of those remaining games because 11-6 would trump 10-6-1 in the division. So they have to lose 2, and the Cowboys have to win out. Public's focused in on the Cowboys needing to win this game to stay alive. I think they're going to have a problem with Minnesota. I like Minnesota plus the 6. Dallas heavily bet by public bettors, and there's sharp money all over Minnesota. Kind of like last week. It's like, well, why? Well, because they can run the football, actually. They can run it with Aaron Jones and with Jordan Mason. And they can really defend. They've got a very good defense. So I could see Dallas winning this game, but maybe in overtime, something like, 29-23, something like that. That's it for the weekend. That is 4 additional plays in addition to last night's winner with Atlanta. The Chiefs -5.5, the Ravens -2.5, the Saints +3, and then the Sunday night game, the Vikings plus the 6. That's what I got. By the way, that poll that we put out on the pie blame chart, Adam Peters has the biggest slice by far at 60.3%. Quinn at 31%, Cliff Kingsbury at 8.6%. So there you go. I had Quinn slightly over Peters, slightly over Kingsbury. All right, Sunday in the Meadowlands. Run the football, use Marcus in the run game. Rodriguez gets it 20 times. I actually think this is a very winnable game. They're playing a team defensively that has really struggled recently to stop almost anybody. They got blown out by the Patriots. They've had the ability to hang in these games, but they give up 30-plus a game. They're the 31st ranked rush defense. This feels like, one of those cold, windy, snow ending, but just dismal kind of environments for a mid-December game between 2 teams with a combined 5 wins. I actually like Washington to win the game, 17-16.
Ooh.
A missed Giants PAT. They lead the league in missed PATs. Ends up being the difference in this game. And for all that now really want the highest possible draft pick, that'll be a blow to it. 17-16, Washington. What do you got, Max?
All right, give me Washington 18, Giants 15. I think we're gonna go back to the what was it, the kickerless game? If that was last year. So yeah, 18-15 Washington.
All right, no Graham Gano in that game. They had no kicker in that week 2 21-18 win. 18-15 Washington, 17-16 Washington. We're picking the home team to snap the losing skid against the Giants. Enjoy the football. Back on Monday. Chris Russell's next.